First of all, thank you for joining us tonight. It's lovely to have you on our webinar. Can I just first start by asking you, you came into fostering first. You've got quite an amazing family network, and we were just discussing before we came on air about your family and the setup and the similarities that we've both had in our experiences. Can you tell us a bit of background about you?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I'll say thank you everyone for coming tonight, and thank you, Andrew, for inviting me as well to this webinar. So I'm Shushma, and I, as Andrew rightly said, I was an LSA first. That was my first job as an LSA, and then I became a higher level teaching assistant. Before then training to become a teacher, and all of my teaching career, to be honest, was all in special needs and special needs school. So that's my professional, and now I'm still working now, but I left teaching 2 years ago, and I now work for a charity who helps support bereaved families who have lost a child. So that's a little bit about my professional. Family network, as Andrew just said, we were talking about it. So I live with my parents, with my older brother who's a year older than me. And there was also my younger brother who was 14 years younger than me, but he passed away 12 years ago now. So that's our family set up. And obviously I have my daughter, Layla, who's 8.
Okay, thank you. And can you give us a bit of an insight into how you came about adopting Layla? Because in your book, you talk quite emotively about the history of your brother and the impact that your brother had on your family as carers as well. Could you give us a bit of an insight into that before going into telling us why you chose to take on Layla?
Yeah, of course. So my younger brother who passed away, as I mentioned, 12 years ago, his name was Arvind, and he had Duchenne muscular dystrophy, so that's a muscle wasting illness. And so that was our first experience into the world of special needs. And that kind of shaped us as a family, to be honest, and gave us an insight into how to deal with the world, I guess, with school, education, advocating, trying to get his needs. And he always loved children. And my parents wanted to foster many years ago, but my mum felt it wasn't the right time. Both were working full time. And then obviously my brother came along, and then he wasn't well. And so my parents decided to wait. And then when my brother passed away a few years after, my mum felt, paid for the mortgage and everything. I think now's the right time to foster. We've got time to foster, asked us as a family, whether we were on board with it or not, because obviously, we're still living here. And we said, yeah, let's go for it. Let's go for an information session and see what it involves. So myself, my mum and my dad went. And just so people are aware, but my dad is profoundly deaf. So even though he worked for 40 years, he's profoundly deaf. So then I ended up being the second foster carer. I was working full time, so my mum was like the main foster carer. So I was assessed with my mum. Again, that throws people because they don't realise, they find it really hard to think, oh, mother-daughter, and that just completely throws them because the family setup is very different. But we do it as a family. So my brother and dad are quite involved. Went to the information session, and then we did our assessment. And then obviously I say we passed that assessment because it's quite an intrusive assessment. They look into everything, look into backgrounds. And then we got really excited actually and thought, yeah, let's do fostering. And 6 months later, my mum got a phone call regarding a little baby who wasn't born yet, and that was Layla. So yeah.
Excellent. What sort of information did you have at the outset? I mean, we're talking tonight a lot about FASD, but there was a lot of other complications, weren't there?
Regarding Layla? Yeah. Yes. So when my mum got that phone call, they said to my mum that Layla's birth mum had been heavily drinking, and they wasn't sure if Layla was going to be okay, whether she would be full term, whether she would survive, to be honest. They just wasn't sure about anything. And they just said, look, would we be on standby as a family? That was in August, and she wasn't due till October. And so my mum just said, yes, okay, we'll just be on standby. So that's all we knew up to that point. And then she was full term. She was born full term, but her weight was of a premature baby, which is quite natural, obviously, for children who have FASD. or a low weight due to birth mum drinking, and she was born with 2 holes in the heart, and her skin was quite infected, her hair was quite infected, to be honest, so there was that as well. And she was going through withdrawal symptoms of very high pitched screaming, and so I'm just trying to go back that far. And I think, as I say, I think those were the kind of things that Layla was dealing with, and she wasn't really drinking her milk, to be honest. She wasn't taking to the bottle and stuff like that. So that was from the onset. Feeding was a very big problem, because we had to go in weekly to the hospital, the specialist hospital, because we were very concerned about her weight at the time. And then 3 weeks later, we got a phone call because of the heel prick test to say that she had cystic fibrosis. So amongst all this, we were hearing the word Foetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, but it was just being thrown about. No one was really being specific of what it meant, to be honest. So yeah.
And did you have an understanding of what FASD meant?
No. So I think when it was kind of thrown about, me and my mum then started looking to see what training was out there, to see what courses was out there, and started doing our own research, to be honest, because social services wouldn't really kind of say, yes, she's got it, but they were like, just be aware of it. But now, like in hindsight, going back now, obviously I have Layla's records, it's actually quite defined in the records. Actually, when the scans were there, it's quite clear that it says 4 out of 5 markers shows that Layla has Foetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. But obviously I didn't know that at the time. Yeah. So if I'm honest, no, we didn't know what it involved. Yeah, I think we found something conventional, which was like a 1-day training, which my mum went to first, and then I went to. And then I found the charity that was local to us, but they then had closed down, so it wasn't there anymore. And it was just reading up, trying to get information.
Yeah, and of course, I'm sure we'll go into it in greater detail, but I'm sure at the time as well, were there many people, many professionals that understood the condition? Because there still aren't that many professionals that understand what FASD is, or what the impact of that is.
I think, if I'm honest, Andrew, at the time, no, because obviously when we picked up Layla from the hospital, I still remember the words and the echo in my ears. We have no concerns about Layla. And obviously her weight was premature and she wasn't taken to the bottle. And I still remember when we brought her home, she had such a high pitched scream and she just wouldn't sleep, like for 20 hours, 18 hours. My mum would be walking up and down with her. And I don't think professionals were even aware at that time of just how much it was affecting Layla, even then, to be honest. And then I think what deterred it was a cystic fibrosis, because everyone was like, oh, cystic fibrosis. Even today, people kind of dwell on that. And I'm like, no, hold on. Let's move away from the cystic fibrosis. I'm not concerned about that. It's mild. Mine is like Foetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. This is what affects my daughter on a daily basis. And even then, I don't think, I was really gullible. I think we as a family were very gullible at the time, because social services kept mentioning Foetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, and they kind of said, yeah, Layla probably has it. I just assumed that she's kind of got the diagnosis because social services were saying it, and so that will hold weight, not realizing actually that, they were like, do your research, go and training. But what I didn't realize was actually she didn't have the proper diagnosis, and the hospital didn't really accept it, because even though they're a specialist hospital, they don't even to this day understand about it and how it affects Layla.
And what about I don't know the exact time frame, but at one point you got the opportunity to adopt, didn't you? Can you tell us about the adoption process? And I know that the Form F, it's very intrusive, and you'd already gone through that with the fostering setup. So how did you manage following up on that?
I think I was lucky, to be honest, because so basically the adoption to the matching panel was at 10 months when Layla was 10 months old. So to be honest, it was after a few months that social services, birth parents had kind of stepped away and said, look, we want Layla to go up for adoption. And that's when I kind of put my name forward. We kind of had a discussion as a family who we felt would be, who should adopt Layla, because we knew whatever happened, she'd be staying within the family, but who would best to adopt Layla. So I put my name forward. And I still remember our assessing social worker, who did our fostering. I remember her saying that she assessed people who were going out for adoption. So when I knew that I had to, you know, I was going to be assessed, I then said, look, this was the name of the social worker, because we'd only been assessed 6 months before. Can I please have her? Is she free? And I still remember she left a voice message and she rang me up and she went, hello, you've got me again. And I was like, yes. Because I just felt, like you said, it's so intrusive. She knew all the history of me, and I didn't want to go through all of that again with someone else, like a stranger. And so I feel like I was very lucky because she'd already done it 6 months ago. I then just had to do the extra bit for adoption. I didn't have to repeat my whole history. So, but it is, like you said, very intrusive. And I did say to her, I said to her, because she said to me it's going to be very intrusive. And I said to her, even for fostering, I don't find this intrusive. I find it interrogation, to be honest, because it's really nickety-pickety about everything.
And it's a good opportunity as well, isn't it, to be able to assess your own network, your own ability. If you want to do this, you have to want to do it, don't you?
Exactly.
We've just we've had an amazing family on one of our activity days. They chose, they were prospective adoptive parents, and they wanted to know, they'd been intimidated or a little bit afraid of what it was to care for an FASD child. They'd seen on the checklist to accept an FASD child, and they wanted to know a little bit more about it. And what was lovely, when they came along, they spoke to a lot of our families and spoke to a lot of our individuals and ambassadors with FASD, and it really turned away or turned around their thinking. What was your thinking at the time when you'd gone through all these issues with Layla as a foster child? What was your thinking there?
So I think this is how the adoption came about, if I'm honest. So because we started doing a training, my mum did the attachment training for 12 weeks and we were going to support groups. And I think what clicked for us is because we had my brother who was disabled, we kind of knew what it involves. And what we were worried about is that people will see Layla at the moment as a cute baby and then just want to adopt her and not realize what they were letting themselves in for. And we didn't want her then being adopted and then let it down the road, it breaks down for her. So for us, the key thing is, because she'd only had technically 2 moves, you know, she was moved from hospital to hospital before she came to us at 9 days old. We just felt that at least she'll have that one stability, and that will be us, because we felt as a family, we would be able to do it just because of our own personal experiences and what it involved. And also professionally, because obviously, you know, mum kind of has done things that has involved, you know, working with children with additional needs and working with families who've got trauma. So we just felt like for Layla, we wanted Layla to have the best start possible. So for us, we were like, yeah, let's do this. And, you know, looking back now, I kind of think, obviously it's so different. We're learning with Layla. You know, we're learning this journey with her because, you know, each child is individual, but, you know, it's the best decision we made, to be honest. So.
Brilliant. And one of the things that you say there, you're learning with her, and this is one of the areas that a lot of foster families and adoptive parents experience. It's about how you change. You change your approach, you change your expectations. And when you do that, you have a much more positive outcomes, don't you, and strategies. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the experiences going through from when Layla was very young, how you adapted and changed your expectations?
Shall I tell you what the key turning point was the attachment training that we did. So my mum went on it first. That was 12 weeks. And she came back from it. I was working full time. And my mum said to me, you need to go on it. You just need to go on it, because it will make you think in a very different way about parenting. So I did that training, and I have to say, coming back from it, it made me think, this is all wrong. This is, you know, that you hear from society, this is just so, like, I should be doing the attachment training and Layla needs it. And I'm going to be very honest, for me, it's been a very slow, I don't know if it's a slow change, but I'm more aware of it now. So going back, I think, even though I'd done the attachment training, I knew it was still very hard to adjust and change it, to be honest, as she got older, you know, when she's 2, 3, and it was more predominant with her needs. Like for me, I would kind of get a bit more irritable, or a bit more, you know, the way that you shouldn't be really, and rejecting your child, and you shouldn't be doing any of that. You need to kind of be in it with them in that moment. So for me, it's been a very slow process, and I'm lucky because I've got my family. You know, at times when I was doing that in the beginning, my mum would be like, step away, or just call my name, and then I knew actually I need to walk away. This is not going right. And so for me, it's been a gradual change, going on training, learning with Layla what I need to learn. But seeing from me how it works. So changes of not telling her off, like people say, you know, you tell them off, you're punishing them. Because for me, I could see that just made Layla more ashamed, made her feel she had low self-esteem, low self-confidence. She needed to know she was loved. And so what I've learned is that if something does go wrong, it's being empathetic, being therapeutic, knowing that your child still loves you, and reflect on it together, but maybe not in that moment, maybe tomorrow or the next day, or whenever she's ready, to be honest. So if I'm honest, it's just been a very slow and just learning from, you know, obviously you guys, different charities, just tapping out on all the resources and stuff. But I think personally, it's been through a lived through experience, living with Layla and learning myself and seeing the changes in her.
And also the spectrum is such a vast spectrum. So every child has their own challenges.
Yeah.
And so the personalities come through as well, don't they? This is one of the joys that we do have, is that there are so many great qualities. What were the first great qualities that you noticed in Layla?
She was just very sociable, like very, very chatty, and always just very happy. Like, I'm not happy when she was a baby, because I still remember saying to my mum, like, I wouldn't want my own baby to be like that, because obviously she was crying constantly and she just wouldn't, you know, it was on a loop. Friends would come and say, I think we need to go because we can't hear each other speak. But as she, you know, got a bit more older and withdrawal symptoms stopped, it was just her bubbly personality. I think that's what's just shone, to be honest.
Yeah, that's lovely. Now tell me a little bit about the food, because you've had issues from day one with food, haven't you? You were saying about not taking to the bottle, and then tell us a little bit more about the journey of food and the difficulties that you faced.
This is so close to my heart, Andrew, and I think, you know, going back to your question previously, I think professors used to make me think I was doing things wrong, to be honest. But with food, that was the one thing I was adamant about, that we were not doing wrong. And I say this because I learned this from my teaching and seeing how children were kind of being forced to eat and then they become adverse to it. So Layla from day one wouldn't take to the bowl, and if she did, she would only have very few sips. So, and her weight was very, you know, hospital always checking it was such a big thing. And, you know, we were really concerned, and you know, as she was getting older, they were just like, oh, she's fussy and you need to do this and you need to do that. Obviously, when me and my mum started doing more research, we were like, no, it's the Foetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. And obviously no one would listen. And I think the turning point came is when they did some investigations when she was 10 months old, and they found, you know, there was information of this and there's information of that. And then they decided to put on this strong medication and take her out of, make her on a really restricted diet to help her with her eating, but that still didn't work. And then she went on a specialist milk. When she went on a specialist milk, that kind of helped her kind of take to the bottle. But then she had the peg when she was 20 months. I'm not going to lie to you, that was kind of a battle to get that peg in, because they just kept saying to me, you know, when she goes to school, she'll eat, she'll copy the other children, you know, she needs to be sitting around the table, you need to just kind of get it into her, you need to force her to eat, give her chocolate, she'll eat it. So even though there were like people there were well wishers and they wanted the best for Layla, what they couldn't seem to understand is if I forced Layla, she would become adverse to it. So our way was kind of, we'd leave the food around the table and we'd have it in separate bowls. And if she wanted it, it was there. And if she didn't want it, it was fine. There was no fuss. We'd just walk away and it was finished. But it wouldn't be like, you need to eat this and you need to do that. But once she got the peg in, that's when things kind of started changing, because obviously we could then, fluids, medicine, all her feeds was just going for her peg, to be honest. And, you know, and I would try and, you know, give her a little bit orally. But I think what was really hard for people to understand is, and they kept saying to me, is that, why does she have a peg when she can eat orally? And I used to say, it's not because she won't, it's because she can't. Because she didn't like For example, like she used to always have dry food, and if she had a little bit, for example, of food around her mouth, you had to wipe it straight away. She'd start screaming. She needed to get it off her. She would only eat certain types of textures of foods, and stuff like that. So everything just had to be precise. You know, it had to be a certain type of bread. It had to be a certain type of bowl. But even then, it'd only be like a mouthful or 2 mouthfuls. But again, we'd be like, oh, well done, Layla. We wouldn't want that pressure on her, to be honest. And so that's been a real journey. And then it took us about, I think, 4 or 5 years, I would say, when we started noticing a change where she would only eat at home, which was, you know, we were really happy. And it was a big thing. And how we did that was she couldn't cope being around the table, was too busy. So me and mum were like, okay, what we have to do is we have to feed Layla first. And it wasn't at the big table. We've got like a white table, and she knows that that's where she sits. And she had like this little chair, and that's where she sits. Sometimes she'd sit on our lap, and the professionals would be like, no, you need to get off your lap. She's not a baby anymore. I was like, I don't care, whatever works for Layla. If she wants to sit on our lap and feel comfortable and we need to feed her, that's fine. If she wants to sit on the chair and eat at this table, that's fine. But as soon as we left, she wouldn't eat, because food isn't a motivation. It's not an enjoyment for Layla. So those are the strategies that we brought in, to be honest, and having a divider plate and having very little quantity, so she could see how much she had on her plate, so it wasn't overwhelming. But she would never eat when we were on holiday. She would never eat as soon as we stepped out of the house, to be honest. You know, when we were at the hospital or when she was unwell or even at school, she just never ate, full stop. So but you know,
so where are you now?
Yeah, I was going to say, so if we talk about now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if we talk about now, so since COVID, basically, so we had to shield because of Layla having cystic fibrosis last year, so we didn't step out the house for 5 months. Major changes. So obviously Layla would only eat certain foods. Last year, slowly, she then started eating chips, which she never had. She started dipping chips in baked beans, and that was like, I still remember going, oh, she's having chips, you know, keeping the excitement in me, not to make a big deal. But that was a major turning point. You know, she started eating crisps, which she never did, ice cream, and just started eating food, basically, you know, anything like meats. And so that became our turning point, because, and I kept saying to people that she eats at home, she feels safe. But what we didn't realize is that how much of an impact the outside world was having on her. Because then she never used to have dinner. She never ever used to have dinner. She'd have breakfast. And when I say like she had breakfast and lunch, even then it would only be half a Weetabix. It wouldn't be major portions, and a little bit of lunch and a little bit of fruit. She then started requesting dinner. And I still remember when she asked for dinner, I was like, is this going to last? She's now asking for dinner. She actually realizes she's a bit hungry. So that's been a turning point now, that she has 3 meals. She loves fruit. That's kind of her snacking, is fruit, to be honest. And another thing is she loves cooking. So she started cooking with my mum. She started becoming really involved with cooking with my mum. And she loves that now. And because she was cooking with my mum and really getting involved with it, and she never used to do this, because I think she was worried that if she tasted it, people would then force her to eat it. She would then say, can I try it? And I'd be like, yeah, and if you don't like it, it's fine. So now she'll try stuff and say, oh, no, I don't like that. Or she'll try it and eat it. She'd never do that before. So that is, so yeah. So, and actually her weight and her height is the best it's ever been. Like the hospital's like, it's the best it's ever been. But I do keep warning them. Obviously, once, you know, things go back to normal for us, because obviously we're still like doing our own stuff in a bubble, you know, her weight might dip a bit, but we'll see.
Exactly. And as you say, you've been on a journey with it, and you've done what, you know, Layla, you know what works with Layla, and you've adapted your techniques and methods to her and to what is in her best interest. So, you know, fantastic journey there, and a very difficult one for a lot of parents to actually face. Let's go on to talk a little bit about this journey that you were saying during lockdown, that had a bit more of a profound impact on you, didn't it? Let's talk about schooling. Yeah, tell us about schooling, first experiences of school, and then the impact of that.
You mean when she first started nursery? Yeah. So when Layla first started nursery, I was looking, and I still remember, you know, I wanted to kind of didn't want a nursery attached to a school. I kind of wanted like a church hall, something a bit more smaller. To be honest, that didn't work. You know, people would read her notes and kind of say no. So then we chose her first nursery, and she had a 1-to-1, because Layla does have the highest funding, like the highest banding. So she has a full-time 1-to-1. And that was the wrong nursery, just because the one-to-one kept saying to me and my mum, there's nothing wrong with Layla, she's just spoiled. I can show you disabled children, you know, what they look like, you know this girl, there's nothing wrong with her. And then I could just see like Layla was getting frustrated, and she was like, she doesn't need the peg. And so then obviously like I had to speak to the doctor and said like, do you mind going into the school and just speaking to them? So she went in, because they were like, oh, she can be toilet trained, it's just mum being lazy, it's just Layla being lazy, you know, we take her to the toilet, she's using it, I don't know what mum's saying. And I still remember the doctor was very precise in her question. She was like, so does Layla ask to go to the toilet? She goes, no. So how do you know that she can use the toilet? She goes, because when I sit her on it. And she's like, yeah, but that's different from a child asking to go. You're just catching it if she needs to go. Is it on a regular basis? She's like, no. So then the doctor said to me, look, they're not listening, I think let's take her out of there. You've got time until she's 5 to find another school. So I was like, fine, I'll keep her home. And if a school, you know, if a nursery comes up, a nursery comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And then we did find the nursery that was attached to a school. And I will say this now, Andrew, before I forget, the school is a good school. You know, I still say it's a good school. The Senko was amazing. And I think the reason why the Senko was amazing, she left while I was there, unfortunately, because she had her own personal experiences. So she really understood Layla, and she really understood me. It wasn't, oh, there's that annoying parent that's coming again. And she got it. And she would keep going in and telling the class, like, you need to listen, like mum knows best. And she would be really like advocating. But again, it's hard because obviously she's not in the class and she's not teaching. So obviously, you know, Layla did have a full-time one-to-ones. Her first one-to-one was amazing. She was more of the caring, empathetic side. And so she would be quite nurturing for Layla, and that's what Layla needed, to be honest. And again, you know, nursery would be like, yeah, but I think she's eating, you know, she's been eating this and eating that. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. And I could see, you know, she was fine, she was happy with nursery, but when she hit reception, that's when it became more predominant, because Layla wasn't really coping, to be honest. It was busy and it was a bit more structure. Her one-to-one had changed.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you delve in a little bit more, because there are probably a lot of families out there on this call, and a lot of professionals that would probably get a lot of information, glean a lot of information from your experience here and what you observe. Because as you said, you know, you've come from a schooling background, you've been educated. Now, I just ask you this, how many weeks training did you have in special educational needs as a teacher?
None, to be honest. And even now, it's only, I think, half a term, even less than that. And that's
exactly. You've answered my point precisely. But you know, so you observing and what the teachers observe, can you go in, delve a little bit more into that for us, please?
Yes, it was two different perspectives. So obviously they just saw Layla was happy and getting on with it in nursery, you know, in nursery or reception, and there was me saying that actually she was coming home very dysregulated, hungry, tired, and I could just see she wasn't herself. She wasn't happy, because even when she was coming home, she wasn't really eating. And to be honest, how I put it in perspective, she was on the peg quite a bit at school because she wasn't eating. But and they felt that it was enough for her, which is why she wasn't eating. But to put it in perspective, because my mum said, you know what, you need to put it in perspective. What she was having at school was 200 mils. If you think about, that's a baby's bottle, 1 bottle a day for Layla. That's all she was having throughout. She gets up very early, and that's what she was having for a whole day for 12 hours. And so I was really concerned, because obviously, you know, she's eating at home, but she wasn't herself. And Layla would tell me stuff that was happening, for example, in nursery, and they'd be like, oh, but we didn't see it, or are you sure that happened? But maybe Layla was, you know, didn't explain it properly. So I think that's the downfall as well, because obviously they know these children have additional needs. They then kind of say, well, maybe, you know, maybe they didn't do this, or maybe this happened, or maybe it didn't happen like that. So I could see it was having an impact on Layla, because she was very anxious, you know, finger biting, nails, all that was kind of being displayed at home. And just a volcano, you know, she'd come in, throw her socks, shoes, and just like, rah, 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 rah. But nurse was saying she was happy, to be honest. She stopped reading books at home. She wasn't interested in them. She just stopped engaging. You know, if you wanted to do any bit with her, she didn't want to do it. And then when she started getting homework, for example, from reception, it would be, the barriers would be up. And for me, I knew it was because she was struggling. And I was thinking, is this working? And to be honest, she had a new one-to-one at this time in reception. And she was very different. She was more on the academic side. And she kept saying to me, Layla's very capable, but she doesn't want to do it. And I think she gives you that impression that she can't do it, mum, but trust me, she can do it. I just think she's being lazy and you just need to put your foot down. And I was a bit like, okay, fine. And I think for me, that was really hard because I knew my daughter wasn't happy. I could see the one-to-one had a different approach or different thinking for Layla. And what it was is when Layla was doing, for example, group work and she was struggling, she would then kind of start talking or not doing her work, and then they would take her out to do the work. Now that didn't work for Layla because then that made her different to her peers because she was struggling. Her one-to-one would then take her out, so then she was being alienated from the class. The class would then ask, why is a one-to-one helping her but not helping us? So it was all these messages that Layla was listening to and hearing that made her feel, it just really had, I was really worried about her mental well-being, to be honest. That was my concern. It wasn't the academic. I didn't care that she wasn't ticking all the boxes. Mine was her emotional and mental well-being. I knew it was having a major effect on her because I could see that it was affecting, and she knew she was different from her peers. And everything that this little thing kept happening, it was making it more different for her. Give you a very clear example. For example, I used to say to the school, please use visuals for Layla. That will really help her. And now in the next to show what's happening, because we use it at home, and Layla's quite anxious, and I know it doesn't come across that, or maybe the anxiety you think should be displayed is very different for Layla. It's very subtle. She might do her hair pulling, but you won't know it. She might just hold her hair like this, not realizing that she's actually pulling it out, or she's kind of sitting like this, but you can't see her picking her fingers. But they were like, but we don't need to because she talks. And I think because Layla's very verbal, I still say it now, that's kind of her downfall. Because Layla's very astute. She's very aware of, for example, if someone was to ask her, what did you eat for lunch at school? She would say to them, I've had lasagna, I've had peas, I've had this. Because she knows that's what people want to hear. They don't actually want to hear that she hasn't eaten, because then it'd be like, well, why haven't you eaten? And well, don't you like eating? And so that's kind of, she's learned how to kind of adjust and fit into society. So that was my other down.
Girls are very good at masking as well, aren't they?
Yeah, and that was Layla. that was 100% Layla. And she was very vulnerable at school because she would kind of follow what all the children would do. So still remember the very clear picture of stinging nettles, and a child in her class said, go and touch it. You go and touch it. And obviously, Layla, her hand was all stung and it was quite swollen. And she did it. She said, I did it, mum, because my friend told me to touch it. And it doesn't matter because she didn't mean anything wrong with it. And I'm still going to be her friend. So she was very vulnerable. Layla's kind of would follow the crowd. Anything they would do, she would say. And we was talking about the visuals. So the visuals that they weren't using. And I still remember an incident that happened in PE, for example. A new skateboard had come along, and it was kind of being shown to the children, because they basically, when I went to collect Layla, they said to me that Layla had pushed a child. And I was like, I'm not condoning what she's done, but that doesn't sound like Layla. Can you please give me the full information so then I can kind of understand what happened? And they said, there was this new skateboard. This child went on it fast, and we told Layla, you're next. So I said, okay, but for Layla, you're next means nothing. How long is a piece of string? And that's exactly for her. So she's waiting. She doesn't know what that means to her. And I said, obviously, you've told her she's next when that child gets off, basically. So in her head, that boy's taking too long. If I push him off, I'm next. So she's pushed him off and thinking, right, it's my turn. Not realizing it doesn't work like that. Had they used a visual, so if they'd use a sound timer, and showed to her, look, when this finishes, you're next, she would have quite happily waited in that line and thought, okay, that's finishing, and then it's my turn. But because there was no visuals for her to kind of understand, she kind of did what she did. And I think it's very hard for people to understand, because Layla is very and this is how I put it. So children, babies, when they first learn language, they learn the understanding before they learn to speak. So children with FASD, it's the opposite way. They can talk the talk, but they can't do the walk, as I say. So Layla has the language and she's very articulate, but it's the processing and understanding is not there, to be honest. It's more slower.
And we can't expect our school teachers to understand that. And manage it differently to everybody else, and so that made you come to a decision, didn't it? Tell us more about that.
Made us come to a decision, to be honest. Before lockdown, we were already thinking about schools and it not working, and to be honest, mainstream not being the right environment. But because Foetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder means nothing in the education world, I don't mean schools, I just mean in general, to get into a specialist school. The Cystic Fibrosis psychologist, who's amazing, she's the only one who kind of saw Layla as the whole picture. She said, let's go for an assessment for autism and ADHD. So that was all going on in the background. And she said, you know, we start thinking about this. But also, I was thinking of secondary school, to be honest, and how that would affect her. I wasn't thinking for now. And then, like you said, lockdown had then happened. Lockdown happened, you know, we didn't leave the house for 5 months. And I started seeing the small changes in Layla. So obviously school was sending work home every week. We weren't doing it because it just wasn't for Layla. It was just too hard. And to be honest, you know, everyone asked me, how did you start the whole education thing? And I think looking back, it was just very playful, Andrew. It was just going back to the basics again of, you know, we've got the kinetic sound again. Like Layla always had comics, but we went back, to be honest, picture books, baby books. We went back to all that because, you know, books, as I mentioned, Layla loved before she started nursery. She hated it. It was like, no, I'm not reading, don't care. Then we just ourselves started getting like baby books. So no, let's just have a look at this. Let's see what the baby's doing. And so we started doing all of this every day and just having like a little routine, doing art, like painting and craft. So how we do it, like, we'd be like, oh, you know, there's an author called Roald Dahl, like there's a hungry, you know, crocodile. Should we make a crocodile? And so we started tapping into kind of these kind of different things that she loved, to be honest. So like traveling, you know, she loves traveling the world. Let's talk about the countries we've traveled, you know, the language, the food. It was tapping into her interest, how the body works. And we kind of did like a laid her on the floor, drawed around her body, and then named all the different parts. And slowly, Layla really started enjoying it. And we could see she started thriving because she started becoming more, you know, interested in things, in books. So then we could see that she started liking books, for example. And so then we moved on to different books, like, you know, a bit more harder for her. But we would read it. We'd be like, should we try this book? And I'm going to read it and see what you think of it. And so that kind of kept her more interested because we were then reading books with Layla. You know, she'd choose a book, she'd choose who she wanted to read with as well. Mm-hmm. And then you could see her slowly thinking, yeah, I like reading books again now. This is quite interesting. And then
what was her attention span with the books?
Well, then it wasn't very good. You know, in the beginning, it might have been 2-3 minutes. We've had to build up for, you know, 2-3 minutes, 4 minutes, and slowly, just engaging with her, working with her, to be honest, and just going at her pace. So, but now she'll sit and read for half an hour, 50 minutes, depends on how she is on the day. But, yeah, you know, it's a big thing. And we got rid of phonics. I'm glad we got rid of phonics. Phonics was too confusing for Layla. We chucked that out the window. It just didn't work for her. She was getting too confused. We started off with audiobooks for her to learn independently. So, you know, you get the Oxford reading tree. Mm-hmm. We had that all at home. And we said to her, look, we've got like, do you want to listen to the books? We've got the books. And she said, no, I don't want to look at the books. I just want to listen to it. So she listened to them at first. And then slowly she was like, actually, I want to match that CD to that book. We're like, okay. So she was listening to the book and reading the pages. And that made her, one, it gave her that independence. Two, she was in control of the reading. So then she started learning the words through memorization, to be honest. That's how she started learning. And that built her confidence up because then she was like, I can do this. And then she started reading slowly herself. And now the progress we've made is Layla's got to a stage now, she will try and guess a word. She would never do that before because it would be like, if I get it wrong, people are going to think I'm stupid because of obviously past experiences. You know, even now, you know, when we go to the hospital, she'll try and read the leaflets on the wall, or she'll try and read, you know, information. You know, it's so good to see. Or she'll read the subtitles on the TV because obviously my dad's deaf, and she'll start reading it. So for us, it's like, even now, like, it makes me smile because, you know, looking back at how she was, you know, last year she wasn't reading, to now she's reading is a major, like,
and it comes back, doesn't it? Talking about our expectations. We adapt our expectations. These are joyous moments for us, aren't they? Yeah, we celebrate them as a major achievement. And I think that's the wonderful thing, that we get involved with that journey. And tell us a little bit about the implications of missing the social side of things with schools, particularly for an FASD child?
Okay. The implications, I have to say, have been positive at them, you know, so far.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that, because Layla was so, you know, I'm not gonna lie to you, when lockdown first happened and, you know, they said we had to shield, I was like, how are we going to entertain Layla? Because, you know, before we just come back from school, we were going swimming, we were going to art class, we were doing dance, and I was like, this isn't going to work, all of us being at home, and, you know, how are we going to keep her busy? But she needed it, to be honest. She needed that, I think. And again, it's the expectations. What I didn't realize is she needed that slower pace. She needed just to calm down. And socially, if I'm honest and if I'm really truthful, she didn't really have friends in her mainstream school. They were just peers for her, and she just wanted to fit in. And the reason why I say that, not nobody, to be honest, text to see how she was. Like, not one parent texted me to see if she was all right, because obviously they were still going to school, but no one checked, you know, how she's doing, because Layla, I think, stopped going to school the 1st of March, and obviously lockdown kind of happened at the end of March. No one texted to see if she was all right. Or so when I look back, I'm like, she didn't really have friends as such. And, you know, that's the one key thing that people go, what about socialization? And, you know, I've tried, like, even now to do different activities. At the moment, it's not working because of COVID. You know, people look at, you know, read, you know, when I tell them what she has, they're like, okay, we can't do that now because of COVID. We've got to keep our distance. We've got to do that. But I think for me personally, it's been the best thing for her. And the reason why I say it's been the best thing for her, not being around peers of her own age, because I don't think she would be where she is now if she was still with peers of her own age, because she kept comparing herself to them and what she couldn't do. It was a reminder of what she couldn't do and what she was not able to do. And she felt in order to fit in, she would have to copy them. So for me, when everyone says about what about children her own age, to be honest, it's been a positive thing. You know, we go to soft play and we do things now, but that's good because it's not forced upon. She makes friends without that expectations and that burden of, I've got to fit in, I've got to make friends, I've got to be liked.
And let's talk about you as well, because homeschooling means that you're on it all day, every day, 24/7. How do you cope? What strategies do you have to give yourself a breather?
I think, do you know what, we do it as a family, so we all take it in, we kind of all just manage and juggle it together. I'm not going to lie to you, it's not like a set time where we've got to do this or we've got to do that. We know what we want Layla to do throughout the day, and she knows what she wants to do. And like, we might have a specific day, like we're going to do cooking, but it's not like, right, we've got to get this done, we've got to sit at a table, we've got to do this for an hour, we've got to do this. It's very fluid, to be honest. So home education is very fluid. And I guess, to be honest, you know, we do to get that, I don't know, for me, and I guess as a family, we've been doing stuff as a family, like dancing and stuff, doing fun things together, to be honest. And that's, do you
have to follow a curriculum at all?
Say again?
Do you have to follow a curriculum at all? Or, and also, what sort of support do you get for, you know, with a disability? Are there EHCP plans that you can follow?
Okay, so I'll answer that, because that's a very easy question, because everybody asks me that. So obviously she's at school, she gets the highest funding. Because I've chosen to home educate her, nothing, zero. Okay.
Right.
There is a person that obviously, because Layla has an ECHP, there is a person that will, it's called like home elective schooling. They will kind of do an annual check to make sure Layla's getting her education. If they're happy with it, I've ticked the box, it's fine. But if I want to contact her, I can. But otherwise, you're on your own. You've decided to home educate your child, you get on with it. So that I can answer. There's nothing. even when they're doing things now, Layla has less access to stuff. So say, for example, I don't know, there's a play scheme or things are going on that Layla would meet if she was in a school, she won't meet because she's home educated. So there's less resources now than there was if she was in school, which is madness, because they're saving so much money if you think about it. So like any equipment or anything she would have got for school, we're obviously buying ourselves for home, to be honest. Because that's just the way, you know, it go, and that, you know, that's fine. We'll do, you know, what we have to do. And then the second question was, do I follow a curriculum? No, I don't follow a curriculum. I go by Layla's pace, to be honest. She never stops learning, and I don't like think like she has to meet this by the time she's 8. All I know, I'm teaching her life. We want to teach life skills. And I had a really long, interesting conversation with the cystic fibrosis psychologist. And what she said to me was, you're doing what you need to do what's best for Layla, and that's teaching her life skills. So when she's older, she's able to be independent. She's able to got those strategies that she needs for when she turns an adult. So she knows what her coping strategies are and what she needs. And for me, it's kind of like learning to write her name. So obviously, you know, when you go places, you can write her name, the date, because that's so important, you know, for when you go places. And just using things and where and money, you know, we're trying to like her to kind of learn about money and the value, you know, the value of it. So when she goes out, she's been a bit more independent about that. So that's what we're teaching her, and those are the kind of things that I want her to learn. But I don't have a curriculum or benchmark.
And in fact, these are the very, very teaching tools that they use for our two foster boys. They teach them that one's 16 and he's just going out into the community to a shop and buying food to take back to the school, and they will prepare their cooking in the afternoon, and he's got complex needs. And so these are the very skills that they're working on directly in a special needs school. So, you know, I absolutely see where you're going with that. I've got a question for you that I'm sure many parents will ask, and that is, how do you manage? Because you alluded to it earlier, that so many people look on you as a bad parent when children are behaving badly in public. What strategies do you use when Layla sort of dysregulates when she's out in public?
So we take stuff with us. My friends laugh because we have this like rucksack. So I have her ear defender. So I just keep stuff in a bag that she may need. And don't get me wrong, in the beginning, it was like, I'm not having that. People will know I'm different. Now, have you got my ear defenders, Mum?
Don't care. Yeah.
Now I need them because she's realised actually the difference it makes if she wants to enjoy something. So we keep her ear defenders. We keep like her chewy chew if she needs it. Her spinning top. So we just take little things that are ready there for her. So we've got it with us if she needs it to hand. And to be honest, we kind of choose environments which we know will kind of fit in for Layla, if that makes sense. So not a crowded place or not a noisy place, or if it's going to be a noisy place where she wants to go, we will then kind of warn her to say, Layla, it might be a bit noisy or it's going to be a bit dark, just so you're aware. So she kind of knows a little bit of what to expect, and so she's aware of that, to be honest.
And what about transition?
So transitions, we kind of have we'll tell her, like, now I've learned I won't tell her if we're going somewhere, like for example she had the dentist, I won't tell her the day before she won't sleep at night. We tell her in the morning, you know, after breakfast or whatever, you know, we're kind of, so she can have a wobbly, she can have a meltdown in the car, you know, we'll get there early, she can sit on my lap, she can cry, she can get really nervous and anxious and do what we need to do, and then walk in. So it's just having that time to prepare her, but not too early, but giving enough time so she can have whatever she needs to do before we go in. You know, I'm fine for her to do it when she goes in, but she just needs that moment with us as well. And so like she's going to the hospital now, she will ask me, for example, am I going to have my bloods? Who am I going to see? So for example, like when we go to the hospital now, she knows that she has to see the 6 or 7 professionals. And so we kind of work down, okay, we've seen so-and-so, who's left? Are we going to see so-and-so? And don't get me wrong, she'll ask the same questions like within half an hour, but you've got to keep answering them to reassure her, because then she's less anxious. Or if we can show her, for example, if we're going somewhere, it might be new, if we've got something that we can show like on YouTube or something, I don't know if it's an event, this is what's to be expected, Layla, to be honest, to try and help her for those kind of things. And just like in the car, knowing not to open your seatbelt, not to touch it, because if not, I put the special button on so she can't. Knowing that when the car stops and when we've said, or the engine's off, you can get out, you get out. Do not get out otherwise. So it's just certain things that we have to do or say.
And when you're at home, do you use a timetable structure or weekly plan? And I know you mentioned visual imagery is so important. We use it at home all the time. Both for emotional well-being, understanding their emotional well-being. Are you happy, sad? Because it's got to be black or white, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
No
Yeah, we do. So we've got the emotional chart, but to be honest, Leia's kind of taken to this calendar that we've kind of used, to be honest, which she kind of changes the date, the month. And so for us, that's her emotional chart now. So she kind of has changes when she does it. Some days she'll have like the date upside down, or she might put it in the month and the day, for example, in the weather. And that's for her saying, I don't feel too good, I'm going to have a wobbly day, I'm feeling a bit. So that's her kind of communicating to us her needs of oh no, I don't feel so good. I think it's going to not be such a good day, to be honest.
And it's you identifying that as well, isn't it, though? That's the important thing for parents to see, is reading between the lines on anything that you see.
Yeah, because when she first did it, I was like, okay. And I said to her, why have you done that? And she didn't say. And I was like, oh, don't you want to change? She's like, no, I'm not changing it. I was like, okay, fine. But then slowly, like, you know, as the weeks or days went on, when she started doing it, we used to click and go, okay. So now obviously we've named it and we say, oh, Layla, do you mean that you might not going to have a good day today? She's like, yeah, Mum, I just feel a bit funny. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And then she'll come down and say, I've just done my board, just so you know, it's different today. So now she'll name it and she'll say, so now we all know what that means. But, yeah.
I always like to sort of finish off with positive outcomes. And, you know, your book was amazing. I strongly recommend it to everybody out there. It's a great insight into living with FASD, the difficulties, the challenges, but also the great positives as well. So, you know, and it was based on your blog, wasn't it? Originally with your blog. And I just want to sort of finish off also by saying that there you are, a teacher in a school. You've been invited recently, weren't you, to speak at the Head Teachers Conference. Tell us a little bit about that.
I have to say, I was pretty surprised when they contacted me. It was very nerve-wracking, but actually in a way I was, once I did it, you know, looking back now, because obviously the recording had just been released 2 days ago, you know, the presentation, I think it was so helpful for head teachers to kind of see, because obviously I had to do it in a PowerPoint presentation. So, and I think it kind of touched a lot of head teachers. And I, you know, want to make it clear, it's not schools that are kind of failing, you know, the whole government, it's kind of everybody that needs to work together, because schools are under so much pressure as well. And that was the message I wanted to get across, that it's not schools that are failing our children. It's kind of like it's the whole system, it's all of us together, working together to kind of make the changes. And I think, you know, the head teacher, you know, when I was kind of talking about and going for the presentation, I think for the head teachers, I think they found it really useful and really helpful, because obviously I spoke about a lot of strategies that we're doing at home and what wasn't working at school. And I think it just helped a wider audience just to kind of see what, it's not about throwing money at these children, it's about making the changes that these children need and tapping into their world rather than them fitting into our world. And I think that's what they needed to see, because obviously people think, you know, home education, people don't understand what it's about. So I think it was very good for them to kind of, you know, because it's been all in the media and the press about, it's got bad press. If you think about this homeschooling, this home education, you've got really bad press. So obviously, you know, for someone to kind of look at it from a different point of view, go, well, actually, we didn't think of homeschooling this way. So yeah.
And when we discussed this earlier, you said the question was, would you send Layla back to school at any point in the future?
Yeah, so I thought about this many times, and I don't know what the answer will be. I don't know what the future will hold. At this moment in time, I will say, while I can do it with my family support, you know, I'm still able to work, and while it works, while Layla's still thriving and getting so much from it, we will continue to do it. I do look from time to time to see schools. You know, if I was to choose a school now, it would be a therapeutic school. And when I say therapeutic school, I'm kind of mean not academic. It would be more about life skills, you know, forest school, cooking, more about that, because that's where Layla's kind of, that's how she thrives in that environment. So never say never. I don't know what your future holds. And I'm not against it at all. If I think, you know, she actually now, you know, this is our stop, you know, we can't do any more, let's start looking, then I will, definitely. And I've learned actually, Andrew, that it's okay, because actually, you know, if she goes to school and it goes wrong, I can just, you know, we can just go back to homeschool. And I've learned, you know, I was so scared last year to do it, but I've learned it's okay.
Shushma, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you everyone for listening.
All the best. Good night.
Bye.